Hi, this is Dr. MJ coming to you from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. This is the Women in Dentistry podcast, where we feature women in dentistry making waves and leading the industry through the next decade. I am your host, Dr. Mary Jane Hanlon, a former dental assistant, dental hygienist, and now dentist. I am very pleased today to introduce you to Dr. Linda Edgar. Linda is currently on the ADA National Board representing the 11th District. She graduated from the University of Washington with a pre-med degree in zoology and an additional degree in science education, getting her master's in education in 1971. Since 1973, she's been married to Brian Edgar, a fellow dentist, who is instrumental in encouraging her to go to dental school. In 1988, Brian brought home a dental school application when her son was 11 and encouraged her to apply. She only applied to the University of Washington and was fortunate enough to get in. Linda has been involved in organized dentistry since she graduated, holding all offices in the Washington Academy of General Dentistry, starting the first Master Track program and helping dentists in Washington State get their FAGD and MAGD from the AGD, which is the Academy of General Dentistry. She also serves as the AGD trustee on the National AGD and 4 years on the National AGD secretary, followed by the AGD national presidency from 2011 to 2014 as the second woman to be president of AGD in its 60-year history. She has a passion for education and helping dental students, serving in the 2020 concurrently as the ASDA and ADA Council of Membership Liaison and helping get the DL OSCE accepted at the University of Washington for licensure. She's a voracious reader with a thirst for learning, having read and summarized over 200 leadership books to help her in her roles. It is indeed my pleasure now to bring you to my interview with Dr. Linda Edgar. Linda, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so appreciative of you taking the time. I know we're on opposite coasts of the country and that it's right smack in the middle of your day, but I really appreciate your time and commitment to being on the show. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Like I do with all of my guests, I would really like for you to start by sharing a little bit about your story, how you got into dentistry, what you've done in the profession, and then where you are today and what your plans are for, the immediate future. Maybe talk a little bit how COVID-19 has affected you and all that kind of stuff. So without any further ado, take the floor. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to our channel, and also don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much.
Well, I had a bit of an unusual path into dentistry. It kind of goes back to my husband and I. We got married young. He wanted to be a dentist. He knew he wanted to be a dentist from the time he was in 7th grade. I wanted to be an MD. I wanted to be an OBGYN. And so that was kind of my goal all through school. And of course, I was told back in the 70s that women weren't strong enough to be doctors, that you really should leave it up to the men to do that kind of work. So I still went through college. Brian and I were both at the University of Washington for undergrad, and we got married his second year in dental school. And I was he's a year ahead of me. I was taking the prereqs for, medical dental. Got a zoology degree, got a teaching degree, got my master's in teaching. So we got married, and we didn't have enough money for both of us to go, and at least we chose for both of us to not go into professional school. So I got a teaching job and taught junior high, which was interesting, to help put him through school. And he got on an Army scholarship, and then we got transferred to Kansas, where he was doing his residency. And then I was going to come back and go to dental school right after that.
So you changed your mind from medicine to dentistry?
Yeah, and I'll explain that in a minute.
Okay.
So unfortunately, I got pregnant when Brian was a senior, and I had a tubal pregnancy, so I lost the baby. And then we moved to Kansas, and 9 months later, I had a second tubal pregnancy.
Oh,
And so I couldn't have any kids. Both tubes were blown out. And that's when, he had graduated and I put my full force into, I took both the MCAT and the dental aptitude tests and everything. And I actually got into dental school. And around April, a lady showed up at Brian's residency program hospital and wanted to give up her baby. We had not even applied to, adopt. So basically, my life, life happens when you're making other plans or whatever that comment is. And so I made a choice. It was 1976. It was in an era where there weren't very many women in dental school and none of them had babies. I mean, back then. Now, of course, people are having babies when they're doing their exams. But so I had to make a choice because this doesn't come along very often. So we decided to adopt. We moved back to Seattle. Brian started his practice. I got lucky and got asked to do another teaching job. And when my son was 11, I was head of my chemistry department, teaching high school at the time. Brian brought a dental school application home and said, "Remember when you were going to go to dental school?" I don't know if you knew this story about me.
I didn't.
Yeah, I was 37. And that was another question mark. Do they let you in when you're 37? What's the positive and negative? So I met with the dean, and it just so happens that the dean of the University of Washington Dental School wife had the same trajectory. She went to school late and it was then an orthodontist. So he was very encouraging. I had a master's by that time in education. I had a zillion credits. So I only applied to the University of Washington because I couldn't go out of state and leave my son. And just so happened that I had also been a runner, a national class runner throughout those years, had run the Olympic Trials Marathon. And when I had my interview, the guy that was interviewing me was starting a running program.
Oh my goodness.
So he was very interested in how to do workouts. And I don't know that that's the reason I got in, but it didn't hurt. So a month later, I got a call saying I had gotten in. I mean, that's kind of the short version of the story. And of course, then I had to make a decision. Do I just take a leave of absence from my teaching job, or do I cut the cord and go for it? So Brian said, you need to cut the cord because you may quit otherwise. Dental school is pretty hard. So I lived at home. It was an hour away. I had an 11-year-old. We were taking care of Brian's older brother, who was manic depressive, and my mother-in-law had just had a stroke. So I had my plate very full in dental school. And then, of course, the first lab experience, your alphabetical order. And on one side of me was a guy who had done lab work in his father's office his whole life. And on the other side of me was a guy who had done jewelry. And so, of course, my wax ups, I felt like a failure from day one. Every week, I felt like I couldn't do, the job. But I made it through, and, it was harder probably because I had the other responsibilities. I was class secretary. I was always the organizer. I was class psychologist for all the people that were going through divorces.
Oh my.
And then in my third year, 1991, when we were taking one of those practical exams I'll never forget it. I was in the middle of the prep and I got a call from Brian, my husband. Never called me during the day because he knew, that you just can't come to the phone. So I knew it was important, went to the phone. He had gotten called up for Desert Storm and was leaving the next day. So I just started shaking because we had a practice that he was running. I was not licensed yet. And my whole world was, falling apart. So we figured that out, and I helped run the practice. We hired another dentist. I took over all the bills and tried to do the rest of my third year and my fourth year while he was gone. Thank goodness that war was a short one. We didn't know, when he left. And he was back, by the time I graduated. But that was, upheaval. And when I meet with the dental school, the dental students, I'm actually the ASDA liaison as well as the membership council liaison this year. And when I meet with the dental students and I sit and I listen to their stressors and them talking about how stressful dental school is, and I get that, because everybody has their stuff that hits them while they're in dental school. And I got to tell you, I mean, I'm smart enough. I work really hard. That's probably been my best thing. But I mean, there were weeks when I just didn't feel like I could take, one more test, one more whatever. And I did well. I wasn't first in my class or anything like that, but I did well and I graduated. And of course, I had my husband, who every time I wanted to quit said,
Get back in the ring.
get up, finish the deal. And the running background I'd done 45 marathons. And I think that had really helped me have the, I don't know, stick-to-itiveness. Because in the middle of a marathon, it's the same way. You feel like you can't go any further. And then once you finish, you just feel phenomenal about it. So I basically went into practice with Brian. We expanded our office to 10 chairs. We had about 15 staff, wonderful staff. Practically my whole career, I've had my staff behind me. And Brian was very involved in organized dentistry from day one. I wasn't really that interested. And he kind of pulled me along to get on the Washington State Academy of General Dentistry board. So I started out my senior year as the liaison for that. Developed some programs, hands-on programs for free for the dental students that we put on through AGD. When I got out, I started a master track program so people could get their masterships and fellowships. I was the youngest dentist, so my first comment was, I'm going to learn a lot from you guys because I'm just starting and you're in the middle of your career. And that's one of the things I think is so important right from the get-go, that you get out into a group with people that you can just spill it. I don't care. People that say they never have a problem in practice or they never have a problem in dental school are lying, because it's not an easy profession, but it's a rewarding profession. And so from that, I, did all the offices for AGD in the state while my husband was doing ADA. And we kind of had to take turns because, people don't really like you to do it together. And then I ran for the AGD board in 2005. So I was a trustee there. And then I ran for secretary 2 years in. And that was really my skill set. I'm very good at taking a lot of information and culling it down to make it, people be able to understand it.
Digestible.
Yeah, and I'm a good communicator. I like to be sure everybody knows, what's happening. I think that's really important. And I was very satisfied with just being secretary. I ran, that's 2-year term. I ran twice, won both times. At the same time, I was Seattle King County president as I was AGD secretary. And I've always felt that both organizations should help each other. I believe the strength of our profession is in education and advocacy and helping each other. Not everybody feels that way, unfortunately. The AGD pushes you to be the best dentist you can be by continuing your education and taking courses. I probably took 300 credits a year the first couple of years out because it was so important to keep your skills growing. And we ended up in our practice, we did just about everything. I mean, I learned to do ortho in 1995. I did that for 25 years, even though as a general dentist, we did full, third molar surgeries. We left the maxillofacial complicated stuff, obviously, to the specialists, but it was a great experience, a great supportive experience. And then once I got done with I was finished with Seattle King. I had done a lot of things in the ADA realm, and we were working, with mid-level providers in that era, which we're still working on. And I was encouraged to run for AGD president. And there had been one woman president. She ran unopposed. It was kind of that, she was unique, very good person. And I was encouraged to run, and somebody decided to run against me, a man from the East Coast, I won't say who. And so it was a little scary. It was a difficult election. It was kind of like being in dental school, wanting to quit every week because of sometimes people will say things about you that aren't true, or will,
Just to deflect, right?
yeah, just to deflect. I mean, I'd done a lot. We both were very, very equal on what we'd done. We'd both worked with the dental schools. Brian and I, during our trajectory, were the chairs of the University of Washington campaign, $22 million campaign under Martha Summerman, who you probably know from NIDCR. And, and he'd done a lot of that too. So, and it's hard to run against people you've been friends with, but anyway, I ended up winning. And as a woman president, I think I did a good job of continuing the communication and, just making sure people knew what was going on. And my goal was to get raise our membership by 4,000, and we did that year. So then Brian was finally done with his board involvement and his ADA involvement on the ADA, Washington State Dental Association, and he encouraged me to run for that board. So I did. And then he had been involved his whole life, in organized dentistry. He'd been a board examiner, he'd been on councils, he'd just done everything. He'd never been a national officer, but he'd done a lot for dentistry. And he was, going to run for ADA trustee. So I'm in Hawaii. We're working on a flip house. This is something we do in our spare time. And he calls me and he says, Linda, I've decided not to run for trustee. And I said, oh, that's too bad. You've been working, for years to do this. And there were two other guys that were running, an orthodontist and another dentist who'd done a lot, general dentist, and both who we knew very well. And he said, but I think you should run. So this was not one of my, I'm not the kind of person that has always wanted to do this my whole life. It's like life happens and doors open. And I thought, well, I've done a lot. Why not me? I'll give it a shot. And so I worked very hard. I got a brochure together with all that I'd done. And I won on the first ballot. And again, it was friends. You're running against people that are friends. So it makes it hard. So I've been a trustee for a couple of years for the ADA. This is my second year through the COVID. And we've been working very hard for dentists. We probably have calls. At the beginning, we were having board calls every other day. And even today, I have a call this afternoon. So we feel like in just a few weeks, we've put out some pretty amazing help for general dentists,
And that you have. I know firsthand, a lot of the information that I'm getting out to my team is coming from the ADA.
Yeah. And the states are doing a great job too. These calls we've been having every Tuesday with the executive directors are phenomenal. Chad Gahani has been working 24/7. He can't be thanked enough for his leadership.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the future is going to bring yet. I'm sort of concentrating on this 4 years, and I feel very honored. There are only, there are 4 women on the board right now out of 17 trustees. After this year, there will be 3. And after next year, there will be 2 because we don't have any more women coming in to the new classes yet.
So the next 2 groups after you don't have any women?
As far as the group that came in this year has no women, and I don't think the group that is coming in the following year has any women. And we want women.
Of course we do. Of course we do.
It's tough to run, because you have to really spend your life building the background to be able to make the decisions at the national level. You know, I know people want the real young dentists to be on some people say they should be on the ADA board, but I realize now some of the decisions you have to have had multiple years of practice experience and organized dentistry experience to really make the hard decisions.
Sure. So are you at this point practicing dentistry at all?
I am still doing some ortho cases, finishing those up. The guy that I beat for trustee actually bought our practice. I actually, in 2015, I was taking care of my mom, flying to the East Coast every couple weeks, and I contracted lip cancer, oral cancer, and this was in 2015. Anyway, Brian had been in practice for 40 some years, and I had contracted lip cancer, and Brian was running for AEDA, Washington State president, and he got up on the podium and he says, if I'm going to do as good a job as the president before me, because he was retired, I'll have to sell my practice. So this guy that I had run against, he got up and he came and asked me, are you guys interested in selling? And we hadn't really been looking, but both of us, I've only been in practice for 30 years, which is a long time, but I wasn't really ready to not practice. So what I've been doing is practicing some in the practice and some, you know, with the ADA schedule, it's tough to say, yes, I can give you Tuesdays because the meetings are all over the place. So I'm not practicing full time, which has been perfect. I don't know how the dentists that are on this board that have started back to work are spending the time. Well, I have 5 states in my district. So as you have many states in your district, so it's busy. So no, I'm not practicing full time, but I still am practicing.
Which is great,
Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit more about your leadership role at the ADA, and you can talk too also about your experience at AGD. You know, both are phenomenal accomplishments for anyone, never mind, you know, a woman, but for any perspective, it's a phenomenal accomplishment because not easy to do, to lead, you know, be a leader in 2 national organizations and lead 1 national organization. I am sure that at some point you will consider doing the presidency at the ADA as well. So you know, we'll see what the next 2 years bring, but you know, I mean, seriously, if there are not that many women, you know, we need to be leading the way for the younger generation. And I don't know if you know this, and I'm not sure what Washington's stats are, but at Tufts, we have 63% females coming in our next year class. And so that's the highest it has ever been.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting.
It is exciting. And not that I feel in any way, shape, or form that we want to sideline men, but it's just nice to finally see more females, you know, taking on professional roles and professional responsibilities. It can be done. And, you know, you grew up in a time, I grew up in a time when, no, dear, you want to be the hygienist. No, I don't want to be the hygienist. I know the difference between a hygienist and a dentist. I want to be the dentist. And I was told I wasn't smart enough, just to shut me up, you know? So I do think they look to us to lead the way because, you know, you more than I did, you know, went through a really difficult time being, you know, older, you know, starting back at a later age. I mean, with a 11-year-old son, I mean, it's amazing that you got through it.
Well, my husband, you know, like I said, I mean, he encouraged me to run for trustee. I mean, how many husbands would do that, step aside for something he's wanted to do? But he knows that how hard I work. And I guess that's, and the other thing that you have to do as a leader, it really frustrates me. I've come up with a few ideas for the ADA that I'm still not letting go of, that I can't tell you about yet, but to help dentists in their practices. And like the ADAPT program, I think is a great program. My comment was, why don't we open it up to the United States? Because there may be people that graduate from the University of Washington, but they want to work in Maine. you know, and that right now that's not a possibility because of the way it's patterned. And so they're looking to do that now. You have to, and the, you know, the thing you were talking about confidence. I think the longer you live and the more times you maybe fall down, but get back up and accomplish that thing that you were maybe not feeling like you had accomplished before, the more confidence you build. And I know that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. I mean, in the running, I started out at 10-minute miles and I finished my career in 88, basically running races because I got injured running 6:15 pace for the marathon because you put in the work. You know, it's the work. It's like you see with your students. It's those kids that, you know, maybe aren't perfect, but they keep working at it. I mean, they're in that lab doing those preps over and over again. You know, you're taking CE, you're working hard. And as a leader, I try to tell people, like when I was sitting in on the membership council and we were talking about women dentists and how it's important this, and I made the comment, which I think was taken wrong. I don't want to be known as a woman dentist. I want to be known as a dentist.
That's correct.
And a lot of people took that kind of offensively. I don't mean that we don't want to give women dentists the things that they need in support groups or articles with pregnancy and all of that. I just want to be known. And even when you're running for an office, don't look at me as look at me as a candidate and
look at me from my experience.
From my experience. And that's really what's happening now. What I've had the privilege over the last, since 2010, probably close to the last 10 years, I was able to go to all the ASDA leadership conferences and to watch that progression of the number of women change, you know, increase was so exciting. I have to tell you, when I was president of AGD, we met with ASDA at that time. That was in 2013-14. We met with them in DC to do the lobby day. Now they meet with ADA, and that's thanks to Jeff Cole. But anyway, we met with them and somebody said, oh, we have a private tour of the Capitol, you know, we're going to have the ASDA leaders come. And I thought, oh, good, it's going to be me and men, a bunch of men. 18 out of the 20 people that came were women. And, you know, Colleen Green, I mean, some of the amazing presidents that have been elected from ASDA this year, they elected 2 out of the 3 officers were women. And when I watched them, I was at their meeting this year as the liaison, when I watched them get up, they don't look at each other, whether it's gender or race or anything, they look at each other as equal. We're all dentists, we're all in this together, we're supporting each other. And what Nancy Honeycutt has done with that group is phenomenal. I mean, so they really do pattern what our profession needs to look to do, I think, you know, in the future.
Well, especially in this day and age, you know, and especially with what's happened recently, you know, the bias, it exists in all areas of our life, doesn't it? And, you know, you're right. I don't want to be known as the female dentist or the female dean or, you know, whatever. I want to just be known for what I do and the work that I put in and if I've done a good job. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I wish we could get beyond the bias, but it still does exist. I see it still to this day myself, and I know you do as well. So, you know, it's a challenge, but I do believe that my daughter's generation, maybe you see it with your son, that the men in that generation are very different, very supportive. They've seen their moms work. They've seen examples of women in leadership roles, and they're extremely respectful of that. And I see my son-in-law, what he does as a dad versus what my daughter does as a mom, it's pretty equal. They share responsibility for their son. He couldn't be happier that he's having another baby and that they're having a girl. You know, all of those things piled together makes me so proud to see what this generation could potentially do to kind of eliminate all of that. I really finally, once and for all. Now, if we could just, get rid of not get rid of, but at least figure out how to heal the lack of understanding between African Americans and whites, that would be a huge thing.
And it has to be intentional. I mean, you have to, you know, I've been trying. We had a African American ethics chair actually from our district in the last go around, and he was phenomenal. But you have to be intentional to encourage those people to say, just like with women, when I was coming up, if not me, then who? Why not me? I mean, why not? I mean, when I was wanting to go to medical school, I was told I wasn't strong enough to be a doctor by my doctor. Why don't you just, do this or be a nurse? And I just wasn't satisfied with that. I was too much. I know making a difference, making a difference, being in a position like you are as dean, what you do every day with those students is making a difference for this world, making them feel empowered that they're going to do a good job and they're going to take over this profession. And the protection, my dad was Coast Guard. He was a rescue pilot. And he, in the end, was an admiral. And he was the protector of the lower side of the East Coast from Virginia down. And that's really what we need to be as leaders. We need to be protectors of this profession and instill the importance of that into our new generation, whether they're men or women, that we all need to take part in that. And that's why organized dentistry, is so important to support.
Without a doubt. So who do you think has given you the best single piece of advice in your career?
Well, I think probably my husband has been my biggest supporter.
He sure sounds like it. He sounds like an amazing man, like in before his time.
I mean, we've been married 47 years and next week. And so, when I was a runner, he was Linda Edgar's husband because I had so much, and he didn't mind that. And it takes a big guy, a big man to help. I keep going back to this trustee thing and how he said, but I think you should do it. And that was the furthest thing from my mind at that point. And I've done it. I got elected. I feel like I bring a perspective that others don't have to the board. I am very much a listener. You wouldn't know that today, but I always try to listen to what other people say before I put myself in the queue, because sometimes you don't need to say anything. Sometimes the best thing to do is not to make a comment, but encourage others to do that. I much prefer putting people in a light, shining a light on them. And if you read, I'm a big reader. I guess the other people that encourage me are all the Maxwells and all the people that talk about, characteristics of leaders. When I got elected as AGD secretary, I felt very like I needed to learn more. And have you heard of the book, Now Discover Your Strengths?
No,
It's
that's
a
a
great
good one.
book. I would encourage you as a dean to have your students, if you buy the book, in the back, there's an online test, and there's 34 strengths that we all have. And we're supposed to move toward our strengths, not toward our weaknesses. And things like achiever, maximizer, connector, motivator, those are the types of strengths. You take this test and it comes out and it tells you what your 5 strengths are. Well, as a former science person, I didn't trust one test, so I took it 3 times, just to see if it would come out the same. And it did. And that test, and there's another book, they're all in the airport. If you go to the airport, Now Discover Your Strengths, and there's one on emotional intelligence. And that, I think that dental schools need to look at emotional intelligence when they let people in, because
Without a doubt.
yeah, being able to read people and how they're really feeling, like on the board, if the discussion gets tense, and I will tell you it's been tense this year because there's big decisions, and you can't read that on a Zoom call. You can't talk it to each other in between. And And the emotional intelligence part as a leader, and when I was a leader at AGD, I like to think I really encouraged those silent people, those people that didn't talk to. So what do you think about this? Or give what Chad has done this year is we have these lightning rods where we talk about what's going on in the districts. It's very helpful. And he has every trustee contribute, and he starts alphabetically and then it'll go reverse alphabetically, so you don't have that same pressure. So books have been very encouraging to me. My husband, my dad, I mean, I had two brothers, very different. My older brother's a writer. He's written 45 books. My younger brother is a guitar player. you know so, and he was very encouraging. He died early of cancer, but at 74, but he never looked at me as a girl, that, and my mom, of course, was. So getting a support group around you. My assistants, when I was running for AGD, I got to tell you, when I was running for that office, the things that were said to try to get other, that weren't true. I mean, she would write me little positive notes. You can do it, and all of this. And so if you have a support group around you that builds you up when you have those tough days, and you will, everybody has them. We all do.
Without a doubt. So, it sounds like your family, your husband in particular, helped you to get to where you are today. That your father obviously had a senior leadership role. Your husband, even though, he went to professional school, he never forgot that was something that you wanted to do. I mean, how amazing is that to be surrounded by so many men? Now, in interviewing other women that have gone through dental school, some of the comments that come back from the male instructors when a female would be in a class would be very interesting. So I won't share anything directly about what was said, but I think that it would be interesting to hear if you experienced any of that while you were going through school.
Well, it was interesting because, I was older. I mean, I was 37 when I was in dental school, and I didn't take any crap.
There you go.
I got to tell you, I had one guy, I came in, I wanted to do 2 onlays in a, 2-hour session or however long it was. And he said, no, you won't be able to do that. And I said, watch me. And of course, that was the time when the assistant sucks up the temporary, when we were making temporaries. And so, but we did get it done in time. And I actually went to the dean and I told him, that this guy should not be an instructor in dental school. You should be encouraging people to be quicker and faster and better, not, putting them down saying you can't do this. And I've used that term a lot when people in dental school, a lot of the instructors they were a little older than me, but some were, similar in age. And I think that it was good that I was able to, I wasn't intimidated by them. I mean, I had friends that were dentists. So in fact, when I took the boards, it was very stressful because what if I don't pass the boards? It's going to be embarrassing, but I did. But anyway, yeah, I don't know that it's happening as much now, is it? I mean,
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think that, everyone is very respectful of everyone that's there.
Yeah, it was mostly the older people that probably shouldn't have been teaching anyway, to be honest.
Right. What do you think is the biggest obstacle you've overcome in your life and that makes you proud?
Okay, well, this doesn't have to do with dentistry, but when I was a runner, 1984 was the first women's Olympic trials marathon, and the trials was going to be in our state. You had to run a qualifying time within the year before the trials date, which was in May. So you had to run it within that year. You had to run under a 250 marathon, and I had run 15, 20 marathons under that time in my career. And I got injured the day before the year that so what you got here is I'm one of 5 women in the state that could possibly qualify. It was a big deal because it was in our state. It's the first women's marathon trials. You're in the paper, lots of pressure. So I kept going back and trying to do another marathon and trying to, make it. And I finally just decided, so for 6 months, I kept getting re-injured, my Achilles. And so in January, I took from January, February off to heal. And there was one marathon, it was a Seattle marathon that I could use to qualify. And I did that. I never forget it was like St. Patrick's Day, March something. And I had to qualify for that to run in the May Olympic trials. And I was on pace and hit the wall at about 20 miles. And this woman came in, I don't know her to this day, and started running with me. And I remember literally I didn't have enough energy to hold my head up. And I crossed that finish line in 5th place in the qualifying time was 2:51:16. I did a 2:50:59. And you would have thought, the crowd, because they knew they were rooting for me because these are my people, and this is a big marathon. It's thousands of people. And they cheered like you. So that, for me, I dug deeper. I don't think I've ever dug that deep in a race. And that, for me, helps me when I get into things. I have this saying, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't know what you can't do. I hope that makes sense.
No, I know. I totally get what you're saying.
I mean, I was ready to quit at 20. Because I didn't have the background training. I'd given up training for 2 months. That's huge when you're marathon training. And so, so making that, accomplishing that was a big deal.
So you don't know who this woman was?
No.
Appeared out of nowhere, and then
like an angel. I mean,
and she disappeared afterwards?
Disappeared afterwards. And she was good. She was running a 6-something pace, so she was good. I don't know. I mean, it's just kind of like how we adopted my son. And I have tremendous faith that when bad things happen, that's a setup for something really good down the road. Just look for the good. When you have a patient in your office that you've broken a root tip on, or you've broken a file on, for endo, or that just got mad at you for no reason, which will happen no matter how good you are. You just have to take a deep breath and go, I'm doing the best I can with what I have, which is a lot. People don't graduate not being good dentists and continuing to learn. And so that, for me, just getting up every time you fall. There's a poem that I was a cross-country coach when I was a teacher, and I was a big runner at the time. So I would run with the kids on their workouts, and there's a poem called The Race.
Oh, I've read it.
Yeah, get up each time, about the kid that keeps falling, he comes in last, and get up each time you fall. And I read that to I gave a lot of talks when I was a coach because I was a marathon runner and stuff. And I would read that, and because we all have that in our life. We have crap happen, that you have to get over. So
it's so true. So when you reflect back, would you describe yourself as a confident woman, or did you gain confidence as you went?
I think I gained confidence. I think every time you sort of accomplish something, you do that good procedure, your patient is really happy with whatever you've done for them. You've made a difference in somebody's life. As a teacher, getting a child to be able to do the math, whatever, you gain confidence from not only achieving things, but doing things you didn't think you could do. And I still have days when I'm not confident about a decision, or, well, why did I say that at the board meeting? Or, we all have those days, but you do the best you can with what you have. And one other thing I used to tell my staff when they would get discouraged or something about whatever, something in their life. I'd say, in the big picture of life, in the big picture of life, this is a very little thing. Try getting cancer.
Yep, it's a drop of water in a puddle of life, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Is there anyone in dentistry today who really inspires you?
In dentistry, oh, I love Maxine Feinberg. She is just, she tells it like it is. I'm on the FDI delegation, and she's our chair this year. And I just appreciate people like that are down. I love you. I mean, at the membership council meeting, you just say it like it is. You're not afraid to, talk about the elephant in the room. And I'm like that. And it makes me more like that, because don't talk around an issue. Let's get it out on the table and fix it.
Let's hash it out and get it done with and move on. And move on. Because there's so many other things to do, right? It's so true. I think that, a lot of younger women, resist speaking out or being direct. And I think that in general, people appreciate when you're direct. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think that in general, most people appreciate when you're direct, because you never have to worry about, well, what is she thinking? Like, you don't care what she's thinking, because she's going to tell you, right?
Exactly. I mean, you're authentic. You don't have to. You don't waffle on how you feel. But there are times when people will talk to me. Like I said, there's a book called Getting to Yes.
Yeah, that's a great book.
You read that. So, ask for people. It's just like we're having some issues with some of the councils. And I said, well, why don't you just have a conversation? Ask them, don't tell them what to do. Ask them their opinion and why they feel the way. And then tell them why you feel the way you do. Don't just slam them on why.
Well, and directing traffic is no way to resolve something, right? Having a two-way conversation is how you resolve an issue. If there's an issue, let's get it on the table and let's hash it out and resolve it.
Right. And with your staff, I mean, it's the same. I always say, if you have something happens in the operatory and you're not happy with what a staff person does, you never, ever, ever put them down in front of the patient. But don't wait until the next day to mull over it. Meet with them and talk to them, but have them able to give their part of the story. So that's worked for me.
Tell us one thing that people would be surprised to know about you.
Surprised to know about me. Well, the marathoning, because I'm not skinny anymore, would be very surprising. I think a lot of people, I don't look like a president, really.
Okay, come on now. Now, what does a president look like, right? Come on.
I don't know. Some people are surprised when they find out, where you're at. I mean, I'm a grandmother, which I love.
Best job ever.
Best job ever. Yeah.
It sure is. It's one of the best pleasures in life. What's your favorite way to relieve stress?
Well, I used to run, but now I walk. I walk almost every day. I'm trying to get time, really make time in my day to do that for a few years. When I got injured, I injured my right meniscus, and I had two surgeries. I did 2 Ironman after dental school, and I wasn't good enough to, do the 6-minute pace in the marathon, but I did do 2 Ironman when I was 45. I guess that's a surprising thing, but I can't run. And the doctor said, if you want to walk, don't run. But I still have my own knees. That's surprising too.
That is surprising. Good for you. Yeah, good for you. I know. I've decided, I used to run a lot, and about 5 years ago, I said to my running partner, and we've been running and walking 30 years together. And I finally said, okay, I'm going to walk, you run, and our pace is about the same. So it's kind of a hoot. And I said, but I want to keep my knees until I'm 100. So, you want to keep going through your knees, that's fine, but I'm going to keep mine till I'm 100. So, you have to make that decision. Is there a personal motto or mantra that you live by?
Just never give up, I think, is probably, and then that little statement I said, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't know what you can't do. So don't put the limits on yourself. Don't tell me something's impossible.
Right. Because I'm just going to prove you wrong.
I've got to, so watch me. Watch me.
Exactly. Do you have a guilty pleasure or a secret dream that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I love to eat. Now that I'm not running.
I don't think any one of us could argue with that. I mean, what is wrong with good food, good company, good wine? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and they talk about the freshman 15 or whatever. Well, I haven't gained any weight. I've been very careful since I've been on the board, but it's tough, I got to tell you. But I can't really talk about one of the dreams yet, but I want to see my grandchildren, my two girls, they're two girls. I want to see them grow up and do anything they want to do, not be, like some of us were kind of pushed down with a thumb and told you can't do that. And having me as a grandma is gonna.
Well, shows great leadership right there. And are they close by so you get a chance to see them?
Well, you're not going to believe this, but they sold their house in a day a year ago, and they asked if they could live with us for a year and save money to buy a house. So we actually have my son and my daughter-in-law and my two young grandchildren living in our home, and we're gone so much. It's worked out well, and they just bought a house on the water.
Oh,
Yeah,
fabulous.
so that's worked out well. And through the COVID, we were actually stuck in Kona.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Oh, twist my arm.
Kona, we have a condo in Kona that we rent, and we had flown there for a week in between meetings to get it ready. And this was in March, right after the ASDA meeting, and boom, everything started spiking. So we called our renter and said, we don't think you should come. And then they closed the airport, so we couldn't.
And then you couldn't get out.
So we couldn't get out. So we just got home in May. We were there for 2.5 months.
Wow.
So my 9 o'clock Chicago board meetings were at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Oh my goodness. I actually had a call with somebody who was in Hawaii, and it was fairly early too for the same reason. And I felt so bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're in Hawaii? And she said, yeah, I got stuck here. I can't get back. So same thing, very same thing. Well, Linda, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. You inspire me. I will just have to tell you that the first moment I heard you start talking at the board meeting and, how we were going through the budget and you understanding finances and all of that kind of stuff, you impressed me from the moment I met you. And I am so honored that you took the time to be here. And thank you for inspiring younger women and for what you're doing to lead the way for the rest of us. I just wanted you to know that I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. It means a lot for everybody.
Well, I hope so. I hope that, we can all inspire each other, right? And that we work collectively to, lend a hand, reach out to somebody that might be struggling, another female that might be struggling, to give them a boost forward, no matter what they do in the office, whether it's an assistant or, because I've been interviewing leaders in industry, assistants, dental hygienists, front office staff, because we are all in this together, right? And I do think we as women have to support one another. And there's always more that you can do if you choose to, right? But some people don't believe they have the capability. But, I hope we can show them that you do, and anything is possible. I believe that.
Yes, that's for sure.
I truly do. Well, thank you so much, Linda. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening to the Women in Dentistry podcast with Dr. MJ Hanlon. If you like our show and want to know more about us, check out our website, thewomenindentistry.com, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Join us for our next episode as we bring you another amazing woman leading the way for the next generation.